My name is Holly Remillard. I'm 29 years old, and I was in the middle of cutting into my mother's pot roast when my boyfriend decided to destroy my entire family with one sentence. Sunday dinners at my parents' house were non-negotiable. They always had been. Growing up, no matter how chaotic the week got, Sundays were sacred food crowded onto the table, overlapping conversations, someone always laughing too loud. It was the one place in my life that felt steady, predictable, safe. That night was supposed to be no different. My older brother was there with his wife, 7 months pregnant, balancing a plate on one hand while keeping an eye on their 3-year-old son. My sister-in-law was glowing in that exhausted, soft way only pregnant women seem to manage. My parents were relaxed, happy. The house smelled like roasted vegetables and gravy. And then there was Marcus, my boyfriend of 11 months, sitting beside me scrolling on his phone like he'd rather be anywhere else. Marcus worked in pharmaceutical sales. Long hours, aggressive quotas, constant pressure. He made good money and never let anyone forget it. We'd moved fast friends to dating to living together in under a year. At the time, it felt exciting, efficient, adult. Looking back, it should have felt rushed. He'd been off all day, short answers, tight smiles, checking his phone constantly. I noticed, but I ignored it. I always did. When my sister-in-law started talking with my mom about nursery colors, Marcus let out a sigh so loud the conversation stopped. My mom blinked. "Something wrong, Marcus?" He didn't look up. "No, just wondering if this is all we're going to talk about. Baby stuff." My sister-in-law laughed nervously. "Sorry, I know I'm boring lately." "You're not boring," Marcus said quickly, then tilted his head. "You're just limited. Like your whole personality is being pregnant and staying home. Don't you want to actually do something with your life?" The table went dead silent. My brother froze fork halfway to his mouth. My father's expression hardened. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. "She's raising our children," my brother said carefully. "That is doing something." Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, come on. Let's be adults here," he said. "Your wife is just a loser stay-at-home mom. That's not a real job. She's not contributing anything to society. She's basically a parasite living off your paycheck while the rest of us actually work." I watched my sister-in-law's face collapse in real time. This woman volunteered at the library twice a week. She drove my grandmother to medical appointments. She organized the fundraiser that paid for new playground equipment at the local park. And she did all of that while growing a human being inside her. "Interesting take," I said flatly. My brother stood up without a word, took his wife's hand, lifted their son from the high chair, and walked out. The door closed softly behind them. Marcus looked around confused. "What, I'm just being honest?" "No," my father said quietly. Nobody needed to say that. "Get your purse," I said. "Get out of my parents' house." Marcus stared at me. "Excuse me. You just called a pregnant woman a parasite. You're done here." "You're seriously taking their side," he snapped. "They're my family," I said. "And you crossed a line." My mother stood, voice shaking. "I stayed home with my boys for 8 years. Am I a loser too?" "That was different," Marcus said dismissively. "That was the 80s. "Get out," my father said. "Now." The drive home was silent, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. The silence followed us all the way back to the apartment, thick and suffocating, broken only by the occasional click of Marcus's turn signal. I stared out the passenger side window, watching familiar streets blur past, trying to slow the pounding in my chest. I kept replaying the look on my sister-in-law's face, how she'd pressed her lips together, how her eyes had filled. But she hadn't let the tears fall until the door closed behind her. That image burned into me in a way no argument ever had. Marcus, meanwhile, seemed to be rehearsing a defense in his head, jaw-tight fingers gripping the steering wheel like he was the one wronged. As soon as we stepped inside the apartment, he launched into it. He said everyone had overreacted. He said my family was too sensitive. He said someone had needed to say the truth out loud eventually, and if they couldn't handle it, that was on them. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just listened, and with every sentence, something inside me quietly hardened. When he finally paused, waiting for me to agree, I told him one thing: he was not to contact my family. Not my brother, not my sister-in-law, not my parents. Not to explain, not to justify, not to clear things up. Nothing. He scoffed, rolled his eyes, said I was being dramatic. But I repeated it slower this time until he realized I wasn't negotiating. The next morning, my phone rang while I was making coffee. It was my brother. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. He asked one question: was Marcus sorry I told him the truth, that Marcus thought everyone was overreacting? There was a long pause on the line. Then my brother exhaled sharply. He said that in that case, Marcus was banned from everything: birthdays, holidays, hospital visits, the baby shower, the baptism, all of it. He said his wife had cried herself to sleep the night before, worrying that maybe on some level she really was worthless. Hearing that snapped something tight and fragile inside my chest. When I hung up, Marcus was standing in the bedroom doorway. He'd heard everything. "He can't ban me," he said flatly. "That's ridiculous." "He can," I replied. "And he just did." He laughed, pacing the living room, running a hand through his hair. He said my sister-in-law needed thicker skin, that if she was going to choose to stay home, she had to accept that people would judge her. I told him the only person judging her was him. He countered that my parents were probably secretly worried, too, that no one liked seeing their son support a grown woman who did nothing. That was the moment I realized how little he understood my family. My parents adored my sister-in-law. They bragged about her to their friends. They trusted her with their grandchildren. The idea that she was a burden had never crossed their minds until Marcus forced it into the room. By Tuesday, the consequences started stacking up. My mother called to tell me she was planning a birthday lunch the following month. 20 people. Marcus wasn't invited. She said it calmly, but there was steel underneath it. When I told Marcus, he snapped that it was insane to exclude him over one comment. I told him it would stop being one comment the moment he apologized sincerely. He said he had nothing to apologize for. The conversation went in circles until he stormed off, slamming the bedroom door hard enough to rattle the walls. On Wednesday, I found out he'd tried to text my sister-in-law anyway. Not an apology, just a vague message about misunderstandings and different perspectives. She didn't respond. My mother blocked his number. My father blocked him too. Marcus was furious, accusing my family of ganging up on him, of trying to humiliate him. I pointed out that humiliation was standing in a room full of people and calling a pregnant woman a parasite. Everything else was a reaction to that. Thursday night, he tried a new tactic. He softened his voice, sat close to me on the couch, told me he felt invisible around my family, that no one ever asked about his job, that everything revolved around babies and pregnancy. I asked him quietly if he'd tried talking about his work at dinner. He didn't answer. He knew the truth. He hadn't wanted attention. He'd wanted control. By the end of the week, the apartment felt smaller, heavier, like the walls were slowly closing in. I could feel something fundamental shifting beneath my feet. This wasn't about a dinner anymore. This was about values, about empathy, about whether I could build a life with someone who measured worth in paychecks and saw compassion as weakness. And as Marcus paced and complained and insisted the world was against him, I realized the scariest part wasn't that he'd said what he said. It was that he still believed it. By Friday, Marcus stopped pretending this was a misunderstanding and started acting like a siege. Every boundary I set, he treated like a personal attack. Every consequence in his mind was proof that my family was toxic, controlling, and out to get him. He kept saying that word toxic like it was a shield he could hide behind, a way to reframe cruelty as honesty and accountability as persecution. That morning, I woke up to a notification from my cousin. It was a screenshot. Marcus had posted a long, carefully worded rant on social media about grown adults choosing dependency over ambition, and how society glorifies laziness when it's disguised as motherhood. He didn't name names, but he didn't have to. Anyone who had been at dinner or who knew my family understood exactly who he was talking about. My stomach dropped. I texted him immediately, telling him to take it down. He replied with a shrug emoji and a single sentence: "It's my page. Free country." By noon, my phone was buzzing nonstop. My aunt wanted to know if Marcus was attacking my sister-in-law publicly. My cousin asked if he'd lost his mind. My brother didn't say anything, he just blocked Marcus on everything. So did my parents. One by one, family members disappeared from Marcus's follower list. When he noticed, he exploded, pacing the apartment, accusing them of trying to silence him. I told him they were protecting themselves. He said that was cowardice. That afternoon, he drove to my parents' house without telling me. I only found out because my mother called her voice tight. She said Marcus had shown up with a gift basket from some expensive specialty store downtown and rang the doorbell like nothing had happened. When she opened the door and saw him standing there, she said no and closed it in his face. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She just shut the door. When Marcus came home, he was shaking with rage, ranting about how unbelievable my mother was, how he'd tried to make amends. I told him buying something wasn't the same as apologizing. He said it was the thought that counted. I said the thought that counted would have been acknowledging he was wrong. That was the first time he accused my family of emotional manipulation. He said they were ganging up on him, trying to force him to grovel. I asked him what he thought accountability looked like. He didn't answer. On Saturday, things took a darker turn. My sister-in-law had a routine doctor's appointment and came home with instructions to reduce stress. Her blood pressure was high. My brother texted me furious and scared. He told me Marcus was officially banned from the hospital when the baby was born. If Marcus showed up, security would remove him. When I relayed that message, Marcus lost it. He started yelling about how he wasn't a criminal, how everyone was treating him like a monster. I told him that actions had consequences. He said he'd only spoken the truth. I said his truth was cruel and unnecessary. That night he went quiet. Too quiet. By Sunday morning, he was back online posting links to opinion pieces and studies about stay-at-home parents, financial dependency, and what he called single-income power imbalances. He sent them to me, too, one after another, like homework assignments. Read this. This explains everything. I asked him why this bothered him so much, why my brother's marriage, which wasn't his business, had become an obsession. He didn't answer. He just sent another link. Tuesday evening, I got a call from my brother. His voice was tight with fear. Marcus had driven past their house twice. My sister-in-law had seen his car and panicked, thinking he might stop. My brother told me that if Marcus drove by again, he'd call the police. When I confronted Marcus, he insisted he'd just been in the neighborhood. I pointed out that their house was 15 minutes in the opposite direction from anywhere he needed to be. He admitted he'd wanted to see it again, as if that made it better. The word stalking hung between us, heavy and undeniable. That night, I slept on the couch, staring at the ceiling, realizing how quickly this had spiraled. A week ago, we'd been planning a weekend getaway. Now I was worried about whether the man I lived with understood basic boundaries. This wasn't just entitlement anymore. It was fixation. And for the first time since we'd met, I felt something colder than anger settle in my chest. Fear. Thursday afternoon, my phone lit up with a family group text. One message, one photo. My sister-in-law, exhausted and pale, but smiling, cradling a tiny bundle wrapped in a hospital blanket. 4 weeks early. A baby girl. 5 pounds and change. Healthy, according to the message, but small and fragile enough to make my chest ache just looking at her. I was sitting at the kitchen table when the notification came through. Marcus was across from me, half paying attention, scrolling on his phone. The moment he saw my expression change, he looked up. "Is that the baby?" he asked. "Yeah," I said softly. "She's here. When can we go visit?" The word we landed like a slap. "I'm going tomorrow," I said. "You're not." He stared at me, genuinely stunned. "What do you mean I'm not?" "You're not welcome as the hospital," I replied, keeping my voice as even as I could. My brother made that clear. "That's insane," Marcus said, standing up so abruptly his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "That's my potential future niece." "She's my niece," I said. "And you called her mother a loser and a parasite 3 weeks ago." He started pacing hands and his hair voice rising. He said this was petty vindictive that I was punishing him. He accused me of isolating him from his support system, of choosing my family over our relationship. I told him my family wasn't his support system. They were mine, and he'd burned that bridge himself. When he demanded I fight for us, I asked him what exactly I was supposed to fight for. The right for him to insult people I loved without consequences? That night, I slept alone. He stayed up late, pacing, slamming cabinets, muttering under his breath. By morning, his things were half-packed, 2 suitcases and a duffel bag lined up by the door. He said he needed space to think about whether he could be with someone who didn't support him. I told him that was fine. He blinked clearly, expecting me to beg him to stay. I didn't. The hospital was quiet when I arrived later that day. My brother looked exhausted, but relieved. My sister-in-law was tired, but there was a softness in her face I hadn't seen in weeks. The stress lines eased, replaced by something calmer. I held my niece for the first time, her tiny fingers curling around mine, and felt a wave of clarity wash over me. This fragile, beautiful life was what Marcus had dismissed as worthless. The contrast was unbearable. While I was there, my phone buzzed. Marcus. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. His voice tight with anger, accusing me of abandoning him when he needed me most. I deleted it without listening to the end. When I got home that night, the apartment felt strangely peaceful despite the half-empty closet and the echo in the bedroom. Marcus had taken most of his clothes. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, it was a relief. I sat on the couch phone in my hand and realized I wasn't anxious. I wasn't waiting for the next argument. I wasn't bracing myself. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. Marcus came back 5 days later, not with flowers or remorse, but with a notebook and a calculator. We still had 8 months left on the lease, shared utilities, shared responsibilities. He knocked like a stranger, standing stiffly in the doorway when I opened it as if we were co-workers meeting for a scheduled appointment, rather than two people who had shared a bed less than a week ago. "We need to talk logistics," he said. We sat at opposite ends of the table. He went through numbers first: rent splits, internet, who would keep which furniture. His tone was calm, businesslike, almost rehearsed. When he finished, he closed the notebook and looked at me with what he clearly thought was sincerity. "I've been thinking," he said. "I'm willing to apologize if that's what it takes to fix this." I studied his face, searching for something: regret, empathy, understanding. "Are you actually sorry?" I asked. "Or are you just willing to say the words?" He frowned. "What's the difference?" The question hit harder than I expected. I explained it anyway, that one meant he understood why what he said was wrong, and the other meant he just wanted access back to my family. He sighed, clearly irritated. "Fine. I'm sorry I hurt her feelings," he said. "There. Can we move past this now?" I shook my head. "That's not an apology. That's you being annoyed that there were consequences." He leaned forward, frustration creeping into his voice. He said he still believed my sister-in-law was making bad life choices, but he was willing to apologize anyway to save our relationship. That was when I laughed softly at first, then harder, the sound surprising even me. He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "What's so funny?" he demanded. "You just said you'd lie about being sorry to manipulate my family into accepting you," I said. "And you don't see why that's a problem." He called it compromise. I told him compromise wasn't lying. There was no middle ground between believing a woman raising her children was a parasite and believing she deserved respect. He tried everything after that: tears, anger, bargaining. He offered couples therapy, a written apology letter, volunteering somewhere to prove he valued unpaid work. But every offer felt transactional, like a checklist designed to get him back into good standing without changing who he was. Finally, he snapped. "So that's it. 11 months gone because I said one thing." "That's not what happened," I said. "You said a cruel thing. Then you doubled down. You attacked my family online. You stalked their house. You tried to convince me their marriage was abusive. That's a pattern." He accused my family of poisoning me against him. I told him they didn't have to. He'd done that himself. When he left that night, it felt final. Not dramatic, not explosive, just done. Stop. Part 6. Aftermath and clarity. Marcus moved out the following week. He took most of the furniture, the couch, the dining table, the bed frame, because he'd paid for it, and I didn't fight him on any of it. I kept the television, the kitchen things, the quiet. The apartment looked strange for a while, too open, like a place in between lives. But every night I slept better than I had in months. The first Sunday after everything ended, I went back to my parents' house alone. No tension, no walking on eggshells, just noise, laughter, overlapping conversations. My brother brought the baby by in the afternoon. My nephew announced proudly that he was going to be the best big brother in the world. My sister-in-law looked lighter somehow, like the weight she'd been carrying had finally eased. At one point, she pulled me aside. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, eyes shining. "I feel like I caused problems between you two." I stared at her, stunned. "You didn't do anything," I said. "Nothing. He showed me who he was. I'm glad I saw it before we went any further." She nodded, wiping at her eyes, then laughed and blamed hormones. But I knew it wasn't just that. She'd been carrying guilt that was never hers to hold. I hugged her and told her she was doing an incredible job, that her kids were lucky, that my family was lucky to have her. She cried again, this time harder, and so did I. Later, my mom asked if I was okay. Really okay. When I told her yes, she believed me. My dad just nodded once and said, "Good." She wasn't right for this family. There was no anger in his voice, just certainty. A few nights later, Marcus sent one final text from a new number. He said I'd chosen my family over him, that I'd humiliated him, that he'd never forgive me for it. I replied once, "I'm good." Then I blocked the number. The baptism is next month. Small ceremony, just family. I'm the godmother. My nephew asked me the other day if my mean boyfriend was coming. I told him no. He nodded solemnly and said, "Good. He made Mommy cry." And that was that. People will probably say I overreacted, that I should have tried harder, that relationships require compromise. Maybe they're right about some things. But this is what I know for sure: you don't compromise on respect. You don't compromise on basic human decency, and you don't ignore it when someone shows you they believe the people you love are beneath them. Marcus measured worth by paychecks. My family measures it by care, by presence, by showing up. I know which one I want to build my life around. So yes, I'm single. My apartment is half empty. I'm covering the rent on my own for now. But I can go to Sunday dinners without bracing myself for cruelty. My sister-in-law can raise her children without anxiety. My niece can grow up surrounded by people who see her mother's work for what it is: real, meaningful, and valuable. That's worth more than any relationship that asks me to tolerate disrespect in exchange for companionship. And if someone ever puts me in that position again, I won't hesitate. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. My name is Kathy Johnson, and I was 29 years old the night my relationship quietly cracked in half without either of us raising our voices. I was standing in our kitchen barefoot on the cool tile chopping vegetables for dinner, the way I always did, methodical, familiar, comforting. It was one of those ordinary evenings that feel so safe you don't realize they're about to become a before moment until much later. The windows were open, the city hummed outside. The smell of garlic filled the room. Everything felt normal. Then Benjamin came home. Not late, not rushed, just off. He dropped his keys on the counter and didn't kiss me like usual. Instead, he sat at the kitchen table with his phone in his hand, staring at the screen like it was giving him courage. His knee bounced. He looked nervous, but underneath that there was something else. Excitement. Anticipation. That was the first red flag. We'd been together 2 years, living together for 6 months. We weren't perfect, but we were steady. Shared routines, shared bills, shared future plans that lived in half-finished sentences like, "When we travel next year," and "If we ever buy a place." So when he cleared his throat and said, "Hey, can we talk about something?" I turned off the stove. "Sure." He took a breath like he was about to announce something brave. "I've been doing a lot of reading lately," he said. I smiled automatically. "Since when do you read?" He didn't laugh. About relationships, he continued. Specifically, polyamory. The word landed wrong. Heavy. Artificial. I set the knife down slowly. Polyamory. Ethical non-monogamy, he added quickly, like he was clarifying a thesis. It's about emotional growth, honesty, evolving past outdated expectations. He spoke smoothly, too smoothly, like he'd rehearsed this. I think he said, watching my face carefully, that we should explore it. The kitchen felt smaller. "You're saying you want an open relationship." "It's not just open," he corrected gently. "It's progressive. Lots of couples our age are doing it now. We're young. Why limit ourselves?" He sounded like a podcast. "This is coming out of nowhere," I said. "I've been thinking about it for a while." That was the second red flag. Benjamin didn't think about things for a while. He avoided discomfort. He watched sports highlights and scrolled endlessly through his phone. He never researched anything unless it involved a new fitness gadget or crypto trend. Something inside me tightened. "Let me think about it," I said. He blinked. "Really? You thought I'd say yes immediately. I thought you might argue." I shrugged. "This is a big decision." He smiled, relieved, and leaned over to kiss my cheek. "Take your time." Then he went to shower and left his phone on the table. It buzzed. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The preview lit up the screen. "Miss you, baby. Can't wait for tomorrow." Study group. My stomach dropped. Benjamin didn't have a study group. That night, after he fell asleep beside me, like nothing had changed, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word. The rehearsed tone, the sudden philosophy, the excitement underneath the nerves. The next morning, I called my friend Maya. "He wants polyamory," I told her. She didn't hesitate. "Kathy, he's already cheating." "What?" That's how it starts. They cheat, then try to rebrand it as growth. I called Rachel next. Same reaction. "That's cover," she said flatly. "Permission after the fact." By the third friend, I wasn't shocked anymore. "He's got someone," Lena said gently. "Probably more than one." 3 calls, 3 warnings. That's when I stopped doubting myself. I didn't confront Benjamin. I didn't accuse him. I didn't cry. I opened my laptop and searched for private investigators. If he wanted honesty, I was going to uncover it, whether he was ready or not. The private investigator's name was Daniel, and he met me the next afternoon at a quiet cafe, 2 neighborhoods away from my apartment. I chose it deliberately, far enough that I wouldn't accidentally run into Benjamin or anyone we knew. My hands were steady when I wrapped them around my coffee cup, but that calm wasn't peace. It was resolve. So Daniel said, after I finished explaining everything, the polyamory conversation, the strange energy, the text preview, my friend's reactions. How fast do you want answers? As fast as possible. He nodded like he'd heard that sentence 1,000 times before. Usually when someone suddenly reframes cheating as philosophy, there's already a trail. Give me a week, maybe less if he's careless. Benjamin was very careless. 4 days later, Daniel called me while I was at work. I stepped into an empty conference room, closed the door, and sat down. Are you sitting? He asked. I am. Your boyfriend isn't seeing one other woman. My heart started pounding anyway. He's seeing 3. I laughed once, sharp and involuntary, because my brain refused to process the number. 3, I repeated. 3 different women, different days, different locations. I have photos, timestamps, messages, hotel receipts. This has been going on for at least 4 months. 4 months. 4 months of good mornings and love yous. 4 months of planning trips and arguing about paint colors for the living room. Tell me everything, I said. Daniel didn't sugarcoat a single detail. Woman 1 was a tech consultant. Benjamin met at a coffee shop. They saw each other twice a week. On those nights, Benjamin told me he was attending a professional development meetup. The investigator followed him straight to her apartment. No development happening there. Woman 2 was his personal trainer. They don't train, Daniel said flatly. They meet at the same hotel every week, early mornings while you're at work. Benjamin had told me those were bonus sessions to maximize results. Woman 3 worked as a bartender near our apartment, the same bar we'd gone to together more than once. She meets him after her shifts, Daniel continued. He tells you those are nights out with his cousin. My chest tightened. And here's the part that usually hurts the most, Daniel added. I checked what he told them. I closed my eyes. Woman 1 thinks he's single. Woman 2 thinks he broke up with his girlfriend recently. Woman 3 thinks you're his obsessive ex who won't leave him alone. I opened my eyes. He told him I was his ex. Yes, and there's more, Daniel said. Remember the credit card you gave him for shared expenses? The room felt colder. He's been using it to pay for dates, restaurants, hotels, movie tickets, everything. I didn't speak. I'm sending you the full report now. When the files arrived, I waited until I got home to open them. Benjamin wasn't there yet, texted me earlier saying he'd be working late. I sat on the couch, laptop open, and watched my reality disintegrate in high definition. Photos of him holding hands with woman 1. Video of him kissing woman 2 in a hotel hallway. Screenshots of messages where he described me as unstable, controlling someone he was afraid of. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. My phone buzzed. Benjamin working late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. According to the report, tonight was woman 3's night. I typed back, love you too. Then I did something Benjamin never expected. I stopped being passive. I found woman 1 on social media and sent a message. Hey, you don't know me, but we should talk about Benjamin. Here's my number. Then woman 2. Same message. Woman 3 was private, but I knew where she worked. I created a group chat and added the first 2 women. Kathy, hi. I'm Benjamin's girlfriend, the one he lives with. Silence. Then a reply. Woman 1, who is this? Kathy. The girlfriend he told you doesn't exist. I sent a photo of Benjamin and me from the previous week, us smiling in our apartment. Woman 1, that's impossible. He said he was single. Woman 2, wait, girlfriend. He told me you broke up. I sent screenshots, our texts, the mundane intimacy of daily life. The chat went quiet. Then one message appeared. Woman 1, oh my God. I exhaled slowly. Kathy. He just asked me to open our relationship, said it was about growth. Woman 2. He said the same thing to me about honesty. There it was, the pattern, the manipulation. There's a third woman, I typed. Bartender. He's probably with her right now. Woman 1, I feel sick. Woman 2, what do we do? I stared at the screen, then typed the sentence that would change everything. Give me 1 day. Don't tell him anything. They agreed. Benjamin came home late that night, kissed my forehead, and went to sleep beside me. I lay awake, staring into the dark, no longer confused, just precise. He thought he was the one rewriting the rules. He had no idea the game was about to end. The next morning, I woke up before Benjamin. I watched him sleep for a long moment, his arm flung across my side of the bed like he still belonged there, his face relaxed in a way that felt almost insulting. 4 months of deception had taught him to sleep peacefully. I slid out from under his arm without waking him and went to the kitchen. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I felt organized. That was new. By 9 a.m., I had a message from woman 1. I barely slept. I keep replaying everything he told me. I replied immediately. Same. That's why we're going to compare notes. We moved the conversation off the group chat and into a private video call later that afternoon. I took my lunch break early, closed my office door, and logged in. One by one, the faces appeared on my screen, 3 women who had never planned to meet this way, all connected by the same man and the same web of lies. No one spoke at first. Then woman 2 broke the silence. He told me he wasn't ready for labels because his last girlfriend traumatized him. I felt my jaw tighten. That was me. He said you were emotionally unstable, woman 3 added quietly, that you monitored his phone, that he was scared to leave. I almost laughed. He said I was obsessed, I said evenly, that I couldn't accept the breakup. The room went still. It was surreal watching my own character assassination unfold through other people's mouths, realizing how carefully he'd tailored each version of me to fit whatever sympathy he needed. What did he say about polyamory, woman 1 asked. That it was about growth, I replied. That I needed time to emotionally mature. Woman 2 nodded slowly. He told me he was trying to guide his girlfriend toward a more evolved mindset. We all sat there stunned by the consistency. This wasn't impulse, woman 3 said. This was strategy. That was the moment something shifted. The shame drained away. We weren't stupid. We weren't naive. We were targeted. I hired a private investigator, I told them. I have proof, photos, receipts, everything. Their faces changed not with relief but with clarity. Then he can't deny it, woman 1 said. No, I agreed. And that's why we don't confront him separately. We planned carefully. No yelling, no emotional spirals, no space for him to rewrite the story. One moment, one confrontation. All of us present. That night, Benjamin casually mentioned he had plans. With a friend, he said, tying his shoes. Probably late. I smiled. Okay, I'll be working. He kissed my cheek, completely unaware that every move he made now was documented, anticipated, controlled. After he left, my phone buzzed. We're ready, woman 2 wrote. The confrontation was set for the next evening in the lobby of the apartment building, where woman 1 lived, the place he thought was safe, familiar, comfortable. A neutral space where he wouldn't expect resistance. The irony almost made me smile. The next day felt endless. Benjamin texted me like normal. Memes. Inside jokes. A reminder to buy oat milk. I responded politely detached, watching him perform intimacy like a role he'd perfected. At 7 p.m., he left again, dressed well confident, humming to himself. I gave him a 15-minute head start. Then I left too. When I arrived at the building lobby, the others were already there. We exchanged brief nods, no hugs, no reassurances. None were needed. We were past comfort. At 8:03 p.m., the elevator doors opened. Benjamin stepped out. At first, he smiled seeing woman 1. Then his eyes landed on me. The smile vanished. Then he saw woman 2. Then woman 3. His face drained of color. Kathy, he said, voice cracking. What are you doing here? I crossed my arms calm as stone. Funny. I was about to ask you the same thing. He looked between us, trapped, the narrative slipping from his grip. I can explain it. That's perfect, I said softly, because we're all here to listen. And for the first time since this began, Benjamin had no script. For a moment, Benjamin didn't move. He stood there in the middle of the lobby, like the ground had shifted under his feet, eyes darting between the 4 of us, trying desperately to calculate which version of reality might still work. His mouth opened, then closed. The confident rhythm he usually carried himself with was gone. This was a man who had lost control of the narrative, and it showed in every micro-expression flickering across his face. This isn't what it looks like, he said, finally defaulting to the oldest lie in the book. Woman 1 let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Really? Because it looks like you invited me over while secretly living with your girlfriend. He turned to her, hands raised. I told you things with Kathy are complicated. Complicated woman. 2 stepped forward. You told me she was your ex. That she couldn't let go. Benjamin's eyes snapped back to me. Kathy, please. I held up my phone. On the screen was the first photo from the investigator's report. Benjamin and woman 1 holding hands outside her apartment, time-stamped clear as day. You want to explain this? I asked calmly. His face tightened. You hired someone to follow me. That's what shocks you. Woman 3 cut in, voice sharp. Not the fact that you told me she was abusive, that you said you were scared of her. I never said that, he blurted. I swiped to the next image, a screenshot of his message. She's unstable. I'm afraid to leave. I turned the phone so they could all see. Silence fell like a weight. Woman 1 stepped closer to him, eyes blazing. You told me you'd never been in a serious relationship. You told me you wanted honesty, woman 2 said. That you were different. Woman 3 shook her head slowly. You used all of us. Benjamin's gaze locked back onto me, panic breaking through the cracks. Kathy, I love you. I was confused. I didn't know how to talk to you about this. I laughed then, quiet, incredulous. Confused is forgetting an anniversary. This, I gestured between us. This is planning. I pulled out a folder from my bag and handed it to woman one. What's that? She asked. 4 months of your dates, I said. Paid for with my credit card. Benjamin lunged forward. Don't! Too late. Restaurant receipts, hotel invoices, movie tickets, lingerie purchases. Woman two's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. You used her money. I was going to pay it back, he said weakly, when I asked. After you finished rotating through us. He turned back to me, eyes glossy now. We can fix this. Therapy. I'll stop seeing them. Oh, you'll stop seeing us, woman one snapped, offended on principle. Like we're hobbies. Woman two stepped back, disgust written all over her face. This is psychotic. Woman three didn't say a word. She simply turned and walked toward the exit heels, clicking sharply against the marble floor. The sound echoed louder than any argument. Benjamin reached for my arm. Please, don't do this. I pulled away. You already did, I said evenly. You just didn't think you'd get caught. He dropped his hand, shoulders sagging. Where am I supposed to go? I met his eyes without sympathy. That's not my problem. You can't kick me out, he said, grasping at legality. I live there. Your name isn't on the lease, I replied. You're a guest, and I'm asking you to leave. He looked around the lobby. No allies. No one buying his version of events. I hate you, he spat suddenly. All of you. I shrugged. Still need you out. He stormed toward the doors, pushing past woman one without another word. When the doors slammed and shut behind him, the silence felt surreal. Woman one exhaled shakily. That was a lot. Woman two extended her hand to me. I'm sorry, and thank you. Same, I said, shaking it. You deserve the truth. They left one by one, each of us walking away from the same man for different reasons, bound briefly by the same clarity. I went home alone, and for the first time in months, the apartment felt like mine again. I started packing his things immediately. Not angrily, methodically. Folded clothes, boxed shoes, labeled everything. In the back of a drawer, I found his journal. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. This is so easy, one entry read. Kathy has no idea. Each woman gives me something different. Why choose? If she finds out, I'll pitch the polyamory thing. She's too nice to say no. I closed the notebook and set it aside. The truth was no longer something I had to explain. It was written in his own hand. Benjamin didn't disappear quietly. By morning, my phone was lighting up with messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Different area codes, different tones, same sender. I miss you. You're my soulmate. Remember our first date. We can fix this. Love bombing rapid fire as if affection could overwrite evidence. I didn't respond. By the afternoon, the messages shifted. You can't throw away 2 years like this. You're going to regret humiliating me. I'll tell everyone what you did. Still, I said nothing. Then came the intermediaries. A mutual friend called. Hey, he's really broken up. Maybe hear him out. I sent her one thing, the investigator's report. Just the first few pages. She didn't text back. Word traveled fast after that. Benjamin showed up at the apartment 2 nights later, pounding on the door like desperation could force it open. Kathy, we need to talk. I didn't answer. I called the police. They escorted him away, warning him not to return. As they led him out, he looked back at me with a mixture of rage and disbelief, like consequences were something he still didn't recognize. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. His mother called next. My son is hysterical, she said, voice trembling with indignation. What did you do to him? I ended the relationship after discovering he'd been cheating on me with 3 women for 4 months, I replied calmly, while using my credit card to fund it. A pause. You're overreacting. I have a full report. Photos, videos, receipts. Another pause longer this time. Relationships are complicated, she said finally. Not that complicated, I answered. Don't cheat. Don't steal. Where is he supposed to live? With you, I said. Or one of the women he was seeing. I hung up. That night, after the apartment was quiet again, I sat at the table and pulled up the credit card statements. Every charge, every date, every hotel. Just under $8,000. I took everything, the statements, the investigator's report, screenshots of his messages to a lawyer a friend recommended. He reviewed it silently, then smiled. This is fraud, he said. Clear cut. My stomach twisted. Really? You gave him the card for shared household expenses, he explained. He used it for unauthorized personal use. The documentation ties everything together. I filed the report the next day. Benjamin called me from his mother's phone, sobbing so hard I barely recognized his voice. The police came, he cried. What did you do? I reported the money you stole. It's not stealing, he insisted. You gave me the card. For groceries, I said. Not for your affairs. You can't prove it. I can, I replied. Every charge lines up with the investigator's timeline. He went quiet. This will ruin my life, he whispered. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. These are consequences, I said, not revenge. His lawyer sent a letter threatening to sue me for emotional distress. My lawyer responded with one sentence, proceed at your own risk. The case moved forward. Benjamin was ordered to pay full restitution every dollar plus court costs. A payment plan stretched over 2 years, a permanent mark on his record. His mother called one last time. You've ruined him, she said bitterly. He ruined himself, I answered, and blocked her number. That was the moment I felt it, the shift. Not victory. Closure. I moved 2 weeks later. Not out of panic, not because the apartment felt haunted, but because I wanted a clean line between the woman I had been and the woman I was becoming. A new address meant no memories tucked into corners, no echoes of shared routines, just space. The new place was smaller, brighter, and entirely mine. I sold the furniture Benjamin and I had bought together, the couch where he'd sat scrolling while lying to me, the table where he'd practiced sounding sincere. I replaced everything slowly, deliberately choosing pieces because I liked them, not because they fit a future that never actually existed. I changed my number. I didn't announce it, I didn't explain, I simply removed access. A few weeks after the move, Woman 2 messaged me on social media. Just checking in. How are you doing? I smiled at the screen. Better, I typed back. You? Same. He tried contacting me again. Long message about how you manipulated everyone against him. I let out a quiet laugh. Let me guess, I wrote. He's the victim. Of course, she replied. I blocked him. Smart. I heard through fragments, mutual acquaintances, half-awkward run-ins, that Benjamin had moved back in with his mother. That the fraud charge made job hunting difficult. That he still told anyone who would listen, that I'd overreacted, that I'd fabricated the evidence, that I'd turned everyone against him. People believed what they wanted. I didn't need to correct them. One afternoon, months later, I ran into someone who used to be his friend at a grocery store. She looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot. Hey, she said. I just wanted to say, I saw the proof. I know you didn't lie. Thank you, I said sincerely. She's not doing well, she added. Still living with her mom. I nodded. I hope she figures things out. She left and I finished my shopping oddly light. That night, a friend texted me. Drinks this weekend. I smiled. Yeah, I'm free. And I realized how true that was. Free from suspicion. Free from funding someone else's double life. Free from ignoring my instincts to keep the peace. The whole experience taught me something I wish I'd learned earlier. When someone suddenly wants to rewrite the rules of a relationship, ask why. When multiple people warn you, listen. And when someone shows you who they are not, through words but through patterns, believe them. Benjamin wanted polyamory. Turned out he was already living it. He just wanted my permission to keep lying. Instead, he lost his girlfriend, his home, his reputation, $8,000, and the story he thought he controlled. I lost someone who never actually loved me, and I gained my self-respect back. That was a fair trade. My name is Penny Jones, and I was 29 years old when I learned that silence can be louder than shouting. I was loading the dishwasher when Richard Collins, my boyfriend of 18 months, said it casually, almost proudly, like he was announcing a new streaming subscription. I invited Tina Anderson to move in with us. She needs a place, and you have the space. I froze with a plate halfway to the rack. Tuesday night, 8:43 p.m. The hum of the dishwasher, the clink of ceramic. Tina Anderson, his ex-girlfriend from college, the one he swore was basically family now, the one whose name had started popping up on his phone more and more over the last few months, the one who still called him E, who still sent late-night memes, who still somehow always needed him. I turned slowly and looked at him. Interesting, I said. Richard didn't hear the warning in my voice. He never did when he didn't want to. Yeah, he continued, leaning against the counter. Her lease fell through. Rent's insane right now. It's just the spare room. You don't even use it. I placed the plate down carefully. Too carefully. You told her yes, I said, before asking me. He laughed, actually laughed like I'd made a joke. I'm telling you now. She's moving in Saturday. It'll be fine, Penny. 3 months max. 3 months. That was the number people used when they wanted something to feel temporary enough not to respect. I dried my hands slowly, watching him. Really watching him. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't apologetic. He was relieved, like a decision he'd already made was now officially off his conscience. You're not going to be weird about this, right? He asked. She's just a friend. Of course, I said calmly. Not weird at all. Relief bloomed across his face. I knew you'd get it, he said, kissing my cheek. You're the best. Then he walked into the bathroom to shower. I stood there alone in the kitchen, the apartment suddenly feeling smaller, like the walls had leaned in to hear my answer. I pulled out my phone and texted my landlord. Penny, hey Greg. I'm giving my 60-day notice. I'll be moving out when the lease ends. Let me know what you need from me. He replied in under 5 minutes. Greg. Sorry to lose you. You've been a great tenant. I'll start showings in a few weeks. Want to be present. Penny, no need. Whatever works. I leaned against the counter and exhaled. Richard didn't hear that breath. He didn't know it was the sound of the relationship quietly ending. I opened a rental app and started scrolling. 1 bedrooms, top floors, places with light, silence, doors that closed. By the time Richard came out of the shower towel around his waist, I'd saved 4 listings. Saturday arrived right on time. Tina showed up at 11:00 a.m. with a U-Haul and a smile that was just a little too familiar. I helped her carry boxes like nothing was wrong. Richard kept giving me grateful looks like I'd passed some kind of test. Thanks for being cool about this, Tina said, dropping a box in the spare room. Temporary situation, I said lightly. Oh yeah, she replied. Just until I get back on my feet. Amber flags everywhere. We ate lunch together. She sat between us on the couch, angled toward Richard, laughing at inside jokes I didn't recognize. Interesting. That word kept echoing in my head. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was watching, and I was already gone. The first week after Tina Anderson moved in, everything was framed as temporary. That word kept getting repeated, temporary, as if saying it often enough would stop it from embedding itself into every corner of my apartment. Tina's gym bag appeared by the front door on Monday, slumped there like it had always belonged. By Tuesday, her protein powder had claimed half the kitchen counter. By Wednesday, there were long strands of her hair in the shower drain and flecks of makeup powder dusting the sink. I stared at the bathroom mirror, that night toothbrush frozen halfway to my mouth, and felt something unfamiliar settle into my chest. Displacement. Hey, I said later that evening, keeping my tone deliberately neutral. Can you ask Tina to clean up after herself? Just basic stuff. Hair in the sink counters, that kind of thing. Richard Collins didn't look up from his phone. She's going through a lot right now, he said. Her whole life just kind of collapsed. I'm not asking her to reorganize her life, I replied. I'm asking her to wipe the sink. He sighed, the exaggerated kind meant to signal I was being unreasonable. You're being kind of controlling, Penny. The word hit harder than I expected. Controlling, I repeated, for wanting someone to clean their own hair out of my sink. Our sink, he corrected automatically. I held his gaze for a second longer than necessary. Check the lease, I said. He went quiet. The second week, the invasion escalated. I came home from work on Tuesday at 6 p.m. to find 4 people I didn't recognize sprawled across my living room. Beer bottles on the coffee table. My coffee table. My PlayStation controllers in unfamiliar hands. Hey, Tina called from the kitchen. Hope you don't mind. Just a few friends over. It was a Tuesday. I had work at 8 the next morning. How long are you all staying? I asked, forcing a smile. Not late, one of them said. Midnight, maybe. They stayed until 2 a.m. When I mentioned it to Richard the next morning, exhaustion sharpening every word, he shook his head. You can't expect her to just sit in her room all the time, he said. She's allowed to have a social life. In my apartment. In our apartment, he corrected again, firmer this time. Something in his tone dared me to argue. I didn't. I just nodded and filed it away. By the 3rd week, I stopped eating in the kitchen. I came home Thursday night to find my leftovers gone. The salmon I'd bought specifically for dinner. The rice I'd meal prepped, the vegetables I'd chopped that morning. Tina was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Oh, she said. Was that yours? Sorry. I was starving after the gym. That was dinner, I replied. She shrugged. There's probably a pizza place nearby. When Richard walked in, I explained calmly. He sighed again. Always the sigh. It's food, he said. Don't make it a thing. I made that food this morning, I said. For tonight. And she ate it by mistake, he replied. Let it go. So I did. I ordered pizza. Ate alone in my bedroom. Laptop open on my knees. Rental listings glowing in the dark. The real shift came during the 4th week. I left work early on Wednesday with a migraine vision, blurred head pounding. I unlocked the door at 2 in the afternoon, expecting quiet. Instead, I found Richard and Tina on the couch. Her legs were draped across his lap. His hand rested casually on her thigh. They were laughing at something on her phone, heads tilted toward each other in a way that was far too practiced. They jumped when they saw me. Penny, you're home early, Richard said. Migraine, I replied. Tina stood up too fast. I should, make some calls. Job stuff. She disappeared into the spare room. Richard stepped toward me, leaning in for a kiss. I turned my head. You okay? He asked, frowning. I'm fine, I said. You seem upset. Do I replied evenly. It's probably just my head. I walked past him and closed the bedroom door behind me. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from Greg, my landlord. Greg. Got someone interested in the place. Want to show it Saturday at noon. Penny, go ahead. Saturday morning, I suggested brunch. My treat, I added casually. Richard's eyes lit up. Tina invited herself. We took our time, long brunch wandering shops across town. I checked my watch more than once. 11:50? Perfect. When we got back around 1:30, Richard stopped short in the hallway. Why is there a lockbox on our door? He asked. Tina peered through the window. And, is that a for rent sign? I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The show had begun. The silence inside the apartment felt staged, like the aftermath of something important that had already happened without us. Richard pulled out his phone immediately, frowning. I'm going to text Greg. This has to be a mistake. I didn't stop him. I set my keys down, took off my shoes, and waited. Tina hovered near the door, arms folded tightly across her chest. She looked around, eyes darting from the walls to the furniture to the empty kitchen counter, like she was trying to memorize a place she might lose. Richard's face shifted as he read the response. Confusion first, then color draining from his cheeks. You gave notice, he said slowly. Yes. When? 4 weeks ago. He looked up at me like I'd just spoken another language. You're moving out, he said. You're leaving. And you didn't tell me. I didn't think I needed permission, I replied calmly. It's my lease. Tina stepped forward, eyes wide. Wait, what does that mean? It means the lease ends in 5 weeks, I said. And I won't be here after that. Richard's voice tightened. Where are we supposed to go? I shrugged. I don't know. You've got 5 weeks to figure it out. That's not enough time, he snapped. It was enough time for you to move Tina in without asking me. Tina glanced between us, clearly realizing she'd been standing on borrowed ground the entire time. This is different, Richard said. We live here together. No, I corrected softly. I live here. You stay here. He went quiet. Tina grabbed her phone. I'll call Greg. She put it on speaker. Hi, she said quickly. This is Tina. There's been a misunderstanding about the apartment. There hasn't, Greg replied evenly. Penny gave proper notice. I already have new tenants signed. But I live here, Tina insisted. I have rights. You're not on the lease, Greg said. Legally, you don't have a claim. Her face crumpled as she hung up. Richard turned to me, disbelief hardening into anger. I can't believe you did this. I met his gaze without flinching. Funny, I said. I thought the exact same thing when you told me Tina was moving in. That's not the same. It's exactly the same. You made a unilateral decision about my space. I made one about my lease. Tina tried to step in. Look, maybe we can all just calm down. I'm extremely calm, I said. I found a new place. I gave proper notice. I'm leaving. Richard's voice rose. Where am I supposed to live? Anywhere else, I replied. Just not with me. That night, the apartment felt like a waiting room. The next week was chaos. Richard made call after call. Tina scrolled listings obsessively. Reality hit hard. Rent prices, deposits, credit checks. Their savings were thin. Their options thinner. On Monday morning, Richard cornered me before work. You need to co-sign for us, he said. I actually laughed. You want me to co-sign an apartment for you and your ex-girlfriend? We can't get approved without help, he said. You have good credit. Stable income. No, I replied, absolutely not. His jaw tightened. So you're just going to watch us become homeless? You're not homeless, I said evenly. You're unprepared. By Wednesday, I overheard Tina crying in the spare room. Richard's voice drifted through the wall. She's being unreasonable, he murmured. You deserve better. I stared at the ceiling, strangely calm. The realization had already settled in. We hadn't broken up that night. We'd broken up the moment he decided her comfort mattered more than my consent. And I wasn't fixing what I didn't break. By the time the 4th week ended, desperation had replaced denial. The apartment had become a rotating stage of phone calls, slammed doors, whispered arguments, and increasingly hostile silences. Richard's confidence was gone. Tina's optimism had collapsed into frantic energy. Every conversation circled back to the same problem they couldn't outrun. Money. Most places wanted first month, last month, and a security deposit, nearly $7,000 up front. Together, they'd barely scraped $1,200. They tried applying as roommates, rejected within days, sometimes hours. And then came the pressure campaign. It started with friends. On Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from Samantha Lee, one of Tina's closest friends. What you're doing is cruel. You know they can't afford anything. You're ruining her life. I replied once. She ruined our relationship. I'm just not cleaning it up. Then I blocked her. Wednesday night, I came home to find Marilyn Anderson, Tina's mother, sitting stiffly on my couch. We need to talk, she said. I didn't sit. You're abandoning my daughter? Marilyn continued. forcing her out of her home after everything she's done for you. With respect, I replied calmly. Tina moved into my apartment without my consent. I'm removing myself from the situation. She was helping someone in need, Marilyn snapped. And I'm helping myself, I said. That's also valid. Marilyn stood face flushed. You'll regret this. So will she, I replied, but for different reasons. Friday night, Richard tried his last angle. He found me in the kitchen making dinner, voice low, conciliatory. What if we just reset, he asked. I'll pay real rent. We can make it work. I'm moving out in 3 weeks, I said without turning around. That's cold. No, I replied. It's consequences. Saturday morning, Richard's father called. We can't take her in, he said bluntly. You're forcing her onto the street. She has parents, I replied. She has options. He hung up on me. Sunday, Tina texted. Can we talk just 10 minutes? We met at a cafe. She looked exhausted, hollowed out. I made a mistake, she said immediately. Inviting Richard here, I should have asked you first. You should have. I'll make him leave, she pleaded. Please don't move out. I shook my head. It's not about him anymore. It's about what that decision showed me. She cried. I left. 2 weeks left. Monday evening, I came home to find my mail opened on the counter. Who opened my mail? I asked sharply. Tina stepped out of the spare room. I did. Why? I needed your credit information, she said. Some places let you use a guarantor. You committed a federal crime, I said quietly. She laughed nervously. Don't be dramatic. Get out, I said. Tonight. She didn't believe me. I pulled out my phone. She left. The next day, she came back with her parents to collect her things. The apartment felt larger immediately. Calmer. But it wasn't over yet. The quiet didn't last. 2 days after Tina left, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Is this Penny Jones? A woman asked. Yes. This is Rachel Moore, property manager at Riverside Apartments. Tina Anderson listed you as her current landlord. I almost laughed. I'm not her landlord, I said. I'm her ex-boyfriend's former girlfriend. She was living in my apartment without being on the lease. There was a pause. So you can't verify her rental history. I can verify she's never paid rent to me, I replied, if that helps. It doesn't, Rachel said dryly. Thank you for your time. Tina called 30 minutes later, screaming. You sabotaged my application. I told the truth, I said. Those are different things. You're destroying my life. No, I replied calmly. I'm not fixing it. That same week, Greg called. Just a heads up, he said. Tina's been calling me nonstop trying to take over your lease. She doesn't qualify. Thanks for telling me. Friday night, I heard voices in the hallway outside my door. Tina, Richard, 2 friends. I think we can claim squatters' rights, one of them whispered loudly. I opened the door. Squatters' rights require years, I said evenly. You have 6 days. Try it. I'll call the police. They scattered. Sunday, Tina showed up with a lawyer. I was served papers in my own living room. An emergency motion claiming I was illegally forcing her from her home. I called Theo Ramirez, a paralegal friend. This is nonsense, he said after reading it. She has no standing. He was right. Monday morning, the judge barely looked at her paperwork. Are you on the lease? The judge asked Tina. No. Do you have proof of rent payment? No. Motion denied. Outside the courthouse, her mother screamed at me. You're heartless. The kind with boundaries, I replied. Moving day came fast. The movers took everything that was mine, which was almost everything. Furniture, electronics, kitchenware. Tina stood in the empty apartment, stunned. What am I supposed to sit on? She asked weakly. Not my problem, I said. Richard stared at the empty living room, speechless. I did a final walkthrough with Greg. Best tenant I've ever had, he said. Full deposit refunded. I smiled. As I walked to my car, Tina followed. Where are you going? She asked. A better place, I replied. For $200 more. Her face fell. You could have afforded that the whole time. Yes. Then why stay? Because you didn't make it unbearable until you did. I got in my car. She didn't follow. The fallout was exactly what I expected. Tina moved back in with her parents within a week. They had rules, strict ones. No overnight guests, no extended visitors, which meant Richard Collins wasn't welcome. Not even on weekends, not even just to talk. Tina lasted 3 weeks before her parents started charging her rent. $800 a month. Richard didn't last nearly as long anywhere. He bounced between friends' couches for about 6 weeks before his parents wired him enough money to move back home. 31 years old, back in his childhood bedroom, explaining to anyone who'd listen how everything just fell apart, Tina tried to keep the relationship alive long distance. Late-night calls, long texts, promises they'd figure it out once things stabilized. Richard ghosted her after 2 months. I found out through mutual friends. I didn't ask. I had already moved on literally and emotionally. My new apartment was everything the old one wasn't. 1 bedroom, top floor, huge windows, quiet, light, no uninvited guests, No explanations owed. I bought furniture I actually liked, set things up exactly the way I wanted them. For the first time in months, I slept without tension in my chest. About 2 months after moving, I started seeing someone, Daniel Brooks, an architect. He had his own place, his own routines, his own boundaries. On our third date, I told him the whole story, not dramatically, not defensively, just facts. He listened, then shook his head. She invited her ex-girlfriend to live with you without asking, he said. And somehow you were the villain. According to some people, I replied. People really think actions don't have consequences, he said. They do, I said, eventually. 6 months later, I ran into Tina at a restaurant. She was the hostess. Hey, she said quietly. Hey. She looked smaller somehow. Tired. Real. You look good, she said. Thanks, you too. An awkward pause. I'm sorry, she said finally. For all of it. I was selfish. I just assumed you'd be okay with it. I wasn't, I said. She nodded. I know. Do you think we could ever— No, I said gently. Not even a little. She swallowed. Right, of course. She seated my party. Daniel raised an eyebrow once we sat down. Ex, he asked. The one who invited the other ex to move in, I replied. He winced. Yikes. Yeah, I said. Dodged a bullet. About 8 months after moving out, Greg texted me. Just so you know, Tina tried to get your forwarding address. I didn't give it to her. Also the tenants who replaced you absolute nightmares. You're still my best reference. I smiled and locked my phone. The revenge, if anyone wanted to call it that, wasn't elaborate. No schemes, no humiliation, no shouting. Just consequences. She made a decision that showed me exactly where I ranked in her priorities below someone else's comfort. I made a decision to remove myself legally, cleanly, and completely. No arguments left, no angles to work, just reality meeting entitlement. And reality won. I'm still in my apartment, still with Daniel, still zero regrets. The best revenge isn't dramatic. It's just living better without them.